ولله الأسماء الحسنى فادعوه بها.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah, dear guests, dear viewers. Welcome to yet another episode of our program, Asma'ullah al-Husna, the beautiful attributes of Allah the Almighty. On today's program, we'll discuss one of the attributes of Allah, At-Darr and An-Nafi. And in the studios to help me discuss this are my regular guests from my immediate right, Ustaz Baba Tanja, and next to him, Ustaz Rohan Ahmed. Gentlemen, welcome to the program. He who is responsible for both good and evils, At-Darr and An-Nafi, is the one from whom emanates the good and evil, that which is beneficial and harmful. All of that is attributed to God the Most High, either through the mediation of the angels, men, or inanimate bodies, or without any mediation. Dear guests, welcome back. And in today's episode, we're discussing, as I said earlier, the attribute At-Darr and An-Nafi. And if we start with you, Ustaz Baba Tanja, what does the name At-Darr or the attribute At-Darr mean?
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم جزاكم الله. The name At-Darr is amongst the names or attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is disputed by some scholars, because actually there are 19 amongst the 99 names. There is 81 that are explicitly mentioned in the Holy Quran, and 18 of which is said to not be part of the attributes by some scholars. And of those scholars we have Ibn Hazm, Uthayman, and Al-Wazir. They are all of this view, because they have this perception that the word dar, At-Darr, is from the word from darara, which means to afflict, to inflict, or to inflict pain or to harm. So because of this view that to harm, so Allah cannot harm people. So because this is why some scholars tend to disregard or dispel this attribute altogether. But I think firstly we need to go detail this thing out, because it's very important for us to understand that Allah being At-Darr does not mean that He inflicts pain like unnecessarily, or He wrongs people unnecessarily, because Allah Himself says, Inna Allah la yazlimu mithqala dharra, that Allah does not wrong even with the, in the minutest form, like an atomic weight. So this is how beautiful Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. The word At-Darr, as I said, the root word is da, ra, ra, so which means darar, which means pain, harm, or affliction. So when Allah is said to be At-Darr, which means the attribute is akin to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it simply means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had that might, the power to to inflict pain and afflict someone with adversely in a harmful manner. Because we have to understand, if someone is a master of something, that he is supposed to be having the power of doing good and also harming. Because you cannot be feared, even like we see in a normal way. If a king is supposed to be a king, then meaning he has to be merciful, and at the same time he's got to have the power to afflict pain or to attack his enemies, or do pain, inflict punishment upon those people who wrong him in one way or the other. Okay, that is to to mete out just punishment to other people that went stray away from the principle or the laws of the land. So this is exactly how beautiful Allah Ta'ala is also said to be At-Darr. So just to point out these beautiful things, for instance, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Holy Quran, Allah says with regards to the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, وَمَا مُحَمَّدٌ إِلَّا رَسُولٌ قَدْ قَلَتْ مِنْ قَبْلِهِ رَسُولٌ أَفَإِنْ مَاتَ أَوْ قُتِلَ انقلبت على أعقابكم وَمَنْ يَنْقَلِبُ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ فَلَنْ يَضُرَّ اللَّهُ شَيْئًا وَسَيَجْزِي اللَّهُ شَاكِرِينَ. That Muhammad is not the father of any man amongst you. So if he is killed or been slain, so Allah subhanahu says, وَمَنْ يَنْقِلِبُ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ, will you then turn back from your heel, or will you then turn away because Muhammad is killed? Because Allah is trying to tell them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is still existing, but Muhammad is just a representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But whosoever does that, فَلَا يَضُرَّ اللَّهُ شَيْئًا, is not going to harm Allah of anything. but they are rather harming themselves because they will deprive themselves of the spiritual benefits. So this one, in the sense, is is a harm. But also explicitly, let's say, for instance, in the example of a student and a teacher, we've seen like a teacher giving tests or exams to students. Okay, a teacher might see the student going, writing wrong things or having to going as not going through the papers accordingly. But yet the teacher will not point to that student, telling the student, no, this is not the way. Because it wouldn't be fair, because that's not the way of testing someone. To test someone's intelligence and someone's understanding, you got to let the person continue on what the person is doing until when he is done, then you test him. So this is exactly how Allah becomes At-Darr also, because he gives you everything, the guidance and everything, Yahdi ila siratul mustaqim. But then he lets you do according to your own will, in your own accord. Then after that, when you do something wrong, then he shows you mercy, or tend to punish you according to your actions itself. So that's how Allah became At-Darr.
Thank you very much for that clarity and your example to elucidate this attribute. Ustaz Wan, if I come to you, could you tell us briefly the similarities between At-Darr and An-Nafi?
Jazakallah. Auzubillahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Since we are speaking of these two attributes of Allah the Almighty, as he has explained the meaning of At-Darr, it's something that afflicts pain. So, but when we look at the other attribute, as you mentioned, is the An-Nafi, so which means benefactor. So in meaning, they are like opposite to each other. But then the beautiful thing about this is the focal point of all of this. It brings us to our main purpose of creation. So Allah the Almighty says in the Holy Quran, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولا تدعوا من دون الله ما لا ينفعك ولا يضرك فإن فعلت فإنك إذا من الظالمين. That, and do not invoke beside Allah that which neither benefits you nor harms you, for if you did, then indeed you would be of the wrongdoers. So this particular verse of the Holy Quran itself very clearly tells that Allah the Almighty has the power to do anything. He can bestow you whatever He likes or how much He likes, and He can also inflict a kind of pain. And but we should also remember that He does not initiate a pain. He reciprocates the harm. So it's a kind of a treatment that He gives in exchange of sometimes the deeds we commit or we do. And when we talk of the other attribute, An-Nafi, that one is, if to be honestly, if we just look around the blessings we are seeing on daily basis, we are even sometimes like taking it for granted. Even the air we are breathing, the food we get to eat, and the clothes we wear, all of that is a kind of as a benefit which Allah the Almighty has given it to us as in the form of blessings. So and Allah the Almighty is a Lord for the whole of this world, the universe, and that is why Allah the Almighty says in the Holy Quran, وَلَيْسَ لِلْإِنسَانِ إِلَّا مَا سَعَى, that whosoever strives, he is going to be bestowed with the blessings for working hard. So that's why this question also sometimes people come up with, like, that person is not a Muslim, so why is he so much progressing? Why he has achieved so much in life? The reason behind that is Allah the Almighty made it very clear that whosoever will work hard, he is going to be bestowed with numerous blessings. So there is no way He has restricted this blessing with Muslims alone. But then coming back to the attribute At-Darr, in relation to that, it reminds me of a narration in which the companion of the Holy Prophet, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu anhu, he said to the Holy Prophet that, are we going to be punished for the bad deeds we have committed, or am I going to be punished for those bad deeds? So to that the Prophet of Islam replied and said that, O Abu Bakr, do you not fall sick? Do you not get exhausted? Do you not feel sad? Don't calamities befall you? So he said all these things which a believer faces is a kind of reparation for the bad deeds he had committed. So such a beautiful thing for Muslims, like even if you have done a bad deed and these things are coming up, like you're getting sick and so on, these are kind of reparations for the things you have committed. And this tells us that there's nothing which Allah does that has no benefit. So even our getting sick and calamities befalling upon us, it comes under a mercy of Allah the Almighty. And then and also, and for believers, they take heed, they learn from this, and they try to become better of their spiritual, they try to develop their spiritual status, and they try to develop their bond with Allah the Almighty. So I think these are the basic things which I wanted to highlight. And one more thing, coming back to the resemblance, these two attributes. So the resemblance that these two attributes have is like, at the end of the day, when you are having a pain, you are harmed, you are going through a difficult phase of life, you are reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then contrary to that, when you are blessed with the blessings of Allah the Almighty, the bounties of Allah the Almighty, when you are enjoying them, you are also reminded of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah the Almighty says that when you thank me, I'm going to bestow you with more. So as a form of thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we even try to do good deeds, because no matter how much we thank Him, it's not enough. So as a response, we try to perform good deeds so that at least we can be a little thankful for the bounties and beautiful blessings He has bestowed. So the thing that brings these two attributes together is like the focal point, that it reminds us about our Creator, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Yes, just to add something small to what my brother has just said, because when you look like in every power system, there's what we call balance and checks. Okay, so these two serves like like balances and checks to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does to His servants, because An-Nafi and At-Darr, they are also similar, that they are intertwined. Looking at the fact that, because in the Holy Quran Allah said to the believers, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu alaykum anfusakum, O ye who believe, you are responsible to yourself. You are in your own accord, your responsibility. That is by following the injunction of the Holy Quran. No one is going to force you to do that. لن يضركم إذا يا أيها الذين آمنوا عليكم أنفسكم لن يضركم من ضل إذا اهتديتم. And no one who disbelieves or who goes astray can inflict pain or harm on you. And how does that, how do they do that? Is by going astray, then pulling you towards them, enticing you towards doing that wrong thing. Because as it is stated in the Holy Quran, وَمَنْ خَابَ وَمَنْ دَسَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا, that whosoever does wrong or whosoever errs his heart, has inflicted pain and that harm upon himself. So this is how dangerous it could be. But also beautifully, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us in the that we Rabbi zidni ilma, that Allah grant us ilm. But He also said, Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us in the hadith, Allahumma atina ilman nafi'an wa rizqan tayyiban. Because ilman nafi'an, Allah grant me a beneficial knowledge. A beneficial knowledge in this sense that the knowledge that is going to be beneficial to people, that is going to be beneficial in the way of goodness. But you could be so knowledgeable, but then your knowledge could be used in a bad way. We see the example in the life of the Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam, when Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu anhu and Hazrat Mirza Bashir Ahmad, his younger brother, were seated as brothers, and Hazrat Bashir asked Hazrat Muslim Maud radiallahu anhu that ilm and dolat, which one is better? Ilm acha hai ya dolat? Then Promised Messiah, hearing this thing, he was so afraid, and he asked this man to do istighfar. Do istighfar, do istighfar. Why? Because he is a very dangerous thing. Knowledge could be dangerous, so likewise could wealth also inflict the same danger. So the only beneficial thing is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes to eradicate and dispel all that those dangers and grant you the beneficial manner to which you could serve Allah and humanity in the best manner possible.
That's very good. And the contrasting of At-Darr and An-Nafi is also because light becomes useful in the dark place, and vice versa. So the contrasting of such shows, the beneficials of this in a situation of harm, in a situation of difficulty.
And also, when we look at this thing, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan, we also see that because particularly when the Holy Quran itself has specifically mentioned this, as Murabbi Sahab has just said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inflicts pain for the reason that you recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because without pain, they say no pain, no gain. And Allah said, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي قَبَرٍ. We have created mankind to strive, to feel pain in order to earn something genuinely. Because like we give this example, for instance, when you give someone like a small child money, or you give someone money that he has not earned, then what happens? The person misuses it. But when you earn something by your own hand, then you see the benefit and you know how to spend it. This is the beauty. As I say, the teacher will not punish the student only because he has given the exam, but to tell the student that you need to learn more and you need to facilitate your own by studying more and doing the right studies.
This is why it is said that Allah has a reason for your pain. He has a reason for your struggles. And then he also have ample reward for your faithfulness. Exactly.
That's a beautiful way to go. Ustaz Baba, if I come back to you, do you have any examples of how do we use this attribute of Allah, to call on Allah the Almighty, in our daily lives, in our prayers as Muslims?
Yes, like I've given one example in the hadith. That was the prayer of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahumma atina ilman nafi'an وَرِزْقًا طَيِّبًا وَعَمَلًا مُتَقَبَّلًا. Allahumma grant me ilman nafi'an, a beneficial knowledge, وَرِزْقًا طَيِّبًا, and a pure blessings, pure blessings, like bestow anything that you grant me of wealth, of ideas, of knowledge, of anything, let it be of a pure source. وَعَمَلًا مُتَقَبَّلًا, and that deed that is going to be acceptable to you and obviously to people as well. Because I could say if you do something thinking that you are helping people, but then you get to stress people, or you do wrong by afflicting more pain to people, then that is not mutakabbalan to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you are inflicting harm than good. But then when you come to At-Darr, when this thing comes to mind, when you realize the beauty and the bountiful the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His might. Because for instance, when someone is in pain, you really get to know, like in the Holy Quran, ثُمَّ إِذَا خَوَّلْنَاهُ نِعْمَةً مِنَّا قَالَ إِنَّمَا أُوتِيتُهُ عَلَى عِلْمٍ بَلْ بِيَا فِتْنَةٌ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَهُمْ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. And if Allah touch thee with affliction, there is none that can remove it but He, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself. And if He touch thee with happiness, then He has the power to do all that He wills. So whenever we call upon Allah, whenever in pain, in fact Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself said this in the Holy Quran, that muturra, that's what the verse, the word He used, that it is those people, whenever someone is in pain, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in fact comes to accept the person's prayers. That's what Promised Messiah alayhi salatu wasalam himself said, whenever a person is praying, he should instill that grief, that anguish in himself, or force himself to cry. Why? Because when you cry, you sadden your heart, and then when your heart is saddened, then the entire body responds to the sadness. Then obviously, that's when you pray with utmost your heart wholeheartedly, and that's when you get to realize that you get to realize the might and the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how to ask of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the benefit of this.
Thank you. Ustaz, we've talked about the attribute An-Nafi already, but if there are some things you want to shed more light on that specific attribute?
An-Nafi, which is the benefactor, concerning that, sometimes Allah the Almighty says in the Holy Quran that you call unto me whenever there is a need and I will respond to you. But then at times we are seeking for something which we are not aware is not good for us. But the benefactor, the mighty, Allah the Almighty, He knows that that particular thing is not good for us. So therefore He keeps it aside. But then also the Prophet of Islam said that whenever you are seeking Allah's help, you are praying to Him, never limit His powers, His status. Because when you do that, Allah the Almighty will also respond to you in the same way as you have limited His powers. So whenever we are seeking Allah's guidance, we are, trying to track on the right path. We should try to, pray to Him, try to build our relation with Allah the Almighty, and by establishing our bond, you will see the blessings will keep coming, abundantly. But then we should not also forget that trials are part of a believer's life. So, because there is a statement, as it is said, that the person is innocent until or unless he is tested. So when the person is not tested, no one can know, he cannot be considered as a spiritual person. So that is why it is very, very essential for a person to go several tests, and that is why a believer also goes through various tests. And as he responds to those examinations, in the same way the blessings also follows him afterwards.
And in fact, the Promised Messiah has said this. He said, it is always the believers or the beloveds of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are tested more, that are inflicted more pain. And we see this in the life of the prophets. The Holy Prophet himself said, that's why Allah said, "Ahasibtum an tadkhulul jannata walamma ya'tikum masalul ladzina khalaw min qablikum." Do you think you just enter paradise and the occurrence or the happenings of those people who were before you is not also experienced by you? And what happened to them? The Holy Quran explains, "Masathumul ba'sa." They face, problems, wars, fire, afflictions, Ad-Darr, and painful, incidents and, afflictions. وَسَرْهُمُ الْبَأْسَ وَالضَّرَّ وَزُلْزِلُوا, and they were shaken, truly shaken. حَتَّى يَقُولُ رَسُولُ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مَعَهُ مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ, until the Holy Prophet ﷺ and those people who were believers beside him exclaimed loudly, calling upon Allah, "When are you going to help us?" That's the beauty. So the punishment and pain is part of the trials to make you strong. And if you cannot be a believer, as Murabi Sahib has said, you cannot be a believer or you cannot access that stature, that loftier stature, without having gone through that thing. It's a test that you need to go physically, spiritually. Like, normally here in our daily lives, like we say in the armed forces, you have to be physically fit. And to be physically fit, meaning you have to go through trials that are hurtful, that are painful.
Thank you very much, Ustaz Baba, for your thoughts on that. I'm going to bring this back to some local context to help understand, for instance, the attribute An-Nafi, and how Ustaz Rohan alluded to earlier on in terms of how some people, when they're praying to God, they kind of seem to be limiting to God, asking for some very limited stuff in terms of, God, help me this, help me that, whereas, ask for something good, the best that you can get from Allah the Almighty. For instance, in the Gambia, when griots, in ceremonies particularly, when there's singing the kings or the presidents or some people in society, they talk about your good qualities. You understand? They praise your good qualities before they ask, and by the time they do it in a way that you think you are the best, and then they ask. At that point, when they ask, you're willing to almost give almost everything. So that's in a way, how. As Muslims, especially when you praise Allah, you talk about His attributes, and then seek for Allah's benefits. So in a similar way, I was asking if you can give some examples of how people can use the attribute of Allah, this particular attribute of An-Nafi, to seek prayers or to seek for Allah's mercy and guidance in their daily life.
Sometimes, as you said, and Murabi has also alluded to that, sometimes I may think in the Holy Quran, Allah says, "Asa an takrahu shay'an wa huwa khairul lakum, wa asa an tuhibbu shay'an wa huwa sharrul lakum." Perhaps you may like something that is harmful for you, but also perhaps you may dislike something that is very good for you. So it is Allah that knows. The beauty of praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the Promised Messiah says, he said, "Jo kuch hoga, dua hi ke zariye se hoga." Anything that might come to play, anything that happens to you, or any blessing that comes to you, could only come by prayers. Then you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are firstly telling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, "Now I believe you are the only person, you are the only entity that could grant me this thing. Now grant me that." Allah will judge according to His own wisdom what is beneficial for you and what is not beneficial. And Huzur has always been saying this. Sometimes our prayers are not accepted. Not we think they are not accepted. Sorry, sometimes we think our prayers are not accepted, but it's not. It is not accepted. In fact, it had been accepted, just that not in the way we perceive it to be accepted. Because if we are if prayers is dispelled, meaning we have been, that was his nafa, we have been benefited from the prayer that we made. Allah subhanahu has now, tried to dispel or repel all these evil deeds that you're yearning for. Then he tries to, divert your attention towards something that is better. Then he grants you itminan, that is the comfort of the heart towards that thing. So we continue praying, Allah rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina azabannar. And do you know why? Because once there was this companion of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he went to a place. And people believe, because he's a companion of the Holy Prophet, he's a big man, and people had this, this thing that he would pray, long prayers that, Rabbana, on all those things. And he was asked to lead in prayers. He just said, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa fil akhirati hasanatan. He's done. People are surprised. Only this small prayer, even small boy knows how to pray this. But they don't know what is embedded in this prayer. When you ask for hasanatan, you ask for every good, every beneficial thing. And every bad thing is dispelled of. So this is the beauty of this prayers.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your thoughts on this topic. Dear audience, that's all we had time for. The lesson is pray. Pray to Allah the Almighty in your time of happiness, in your times of distress. Pray that Allah the Almighty provides you the best for whatever you're asking for. Don't limit yourself, or don't seek to limit what Allah can provide for you. He is the mighty, the wise. Until we come your way again, this is MTA the Gambia. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
ولله الأسماء الحسنى فادعوه بها